New Vulcan is dead ahead, Captain. We better be ready.
Okay, we're at Namco Bandai here, and we're joined by Brian, who's giving us a bit more detail about Star Trek and what they're showing here at Gamescom. You guys have shown us a pretty little impressive video there. Can you just give us a brief overview about what we're seeing?
Sure. We're excited to be here at Gamescom this year to really show off Star Trek, which we think is really taking movie games and sort of the Star Trek gaming to a whole new level. We're proud to show off a demo that we have here, but also we're showing a little bit more about where we're going with the story, where we're going with the gameplay, and really stressing that we have a great co-op game, because Star Trek really is about Kirk and Spock and the ability to play as both of those characters in our game together and sometimes against each other really helps us stand out.
Sort of talk about story for a second. I think we actually brought this up during E3 as well. You go on to New Vulcan, that's sort of like the central premise of the story, and that really carries on from the events of the first movie. And we imagine, whilst the movie sequel's in the works, it's possibly something that they would want to address there as well, or perhaps continue that Spock story in the movie. So where do you guys have like a line that's almost like, okay, you guys can do this, you can talk about this, but we've got this for the movie sequel?
Well, I definitely think there's been a lot of conversation about that, and you do want to make them separate. I mean, what JJ and his team and us back at Paramount Pictures have done with Star Trek is pretty remarkable as a film, and when we set out to make this game, we wanted to make sure that we made a great game, and not necessarily just a great Star Trek game, although that's a big bonus for us. We wanted to make something that we could all be proud of from a gaming standpoint. From a story, we wanted to make sure we were doing something completely unique and original, and I think a lot of times games don't spend as much time making a great narrative as they do sometimes great gameplay, and while they're both important, I think we have a great opportunity to show what we think is a plot and a sort of cinematic development that really could be a feature film on its own. So as you mentioned, it sort of starts off on New Vulcan with the Vulcans trying to rebuild their sort of civilization when they come under attack by the Gorn, and Kirk and Spock are sort of thrown into the mix to sort of stop this major threat.
Is the entire focus of the narrative seeing through Spock and Kirk's eyes? The player always stays with those two. There's no cutscenes anywhere else?
We do have some surprises in the game where we're going to be able to take you a little away from Kirk and Spock for a moment, and I think gamers are going to be really excited to see maybe us breaking that mold a little bit.
Guesswork starts here then.
Absolutely.
Let's talk weapons.
Yeah.
You guys showed off some new weaponry in the demo. Can you sort of elaborate on what that is and how you guys have brought that into the gaming space?
Sure, we're excited to be able to bring new things into the Star Trek world. So when you play as Kirk and you want to jump in and use your phaser, we've been able to upgrade his phaser to be more of like a captain's phaser. And what that means is it looks a little more like a six-shooter from an old Western, because we figured, Kirk is more of a cowboy. Let's give him something that really addresses that. Where Spock will have a bunch of sort of Vulcan weapons, but like a Vulcan repeater, and our Gorn have a whole range of weapons that have never been introduced before, sort of super science fiction-y, but really cool stuff. But we haven't forgotten about what really has made Star Trek great, which has been technology for a long time, and we have the tricorder in the game, which is a great tool that's already in Star Trek lore that you can use to sort of propel gameplay, but also interact with the environments around you. And of course, you've got to have the phaser and the communicators and all the things that make Star Trek really the brand that it is.
And do the phasers have different settings on them?
The phasers do have different settings on them. There's definitely a moment in the game where we encourage players to use stun. If your crew members or some other red shirts are infected by a Gorn toxin, you really don't want to go out and shoot and kill them. So you do have to use stun to get through certain areas.
But that's left to player choice?
Sometimes, yes. Absolutely.
I've got a funny feeling there's an achievement or a trophy in this.
There are a couple achievements in the game, yeah. And, Star Trek has always been about that. It's always been more than just let's run out and shoot a lot of things. And I think it's important for us when we were making this game and continue to push on this game that we stress that. This is not just a shooter. It's a puzzle game. It's an adventure game. It's exploration. And Star Trek has never been just about running and shooting. And they have a stun purpose for a reason. They're not just a bunch of killers, and that's not what this game is about.
Gorn, you said 12 different versions of the Gorn, is that correct?
Somewhere around there, about 10 or so. When we sat down at first to talk about which enemy would be in the game, between us at the studio and our developer and our filmmakers, the Gorn were the first thing that we thought of. There's a reason why a character that was in one episode 45 years ago still resonates as strongly as it does, and for us to be able to take that character and sort of modernize him and bring him up into sort of this new, universe that was established in the 2009 film, we actually have the luxury to create a whole race and a whole species and a whole history for these guys, and to be able to see anything from the lower Gorn Rushers that are almost like these giant Dobermans that come at you, to something that looks a little bit more like a Velociraptor, to our commander in the game, who we haven't shown off yet, who is about 12 foot tall and is the main enemy for the game. But also, don't be surprised if you see our old classic friend show up at some point in the game.
I was going to say, were you guys free to design the characters, or was that more of a collaboration between yourselves and the movie studio?
It was definitely a collaboration, not only between us, but with our filmmakers and our friends over at CBS. We were actually working very closely with a lot of the same people who were working on the movie, including some of the creature designers from the film. So a lot of feedback has gone back and forth into what the look of the Gorn will be and how they will function, and we're excited to have that sort of big sort of collaboration of a really, really creative minds.
Excellent. Well, sort of wrapping up then, where are you guys right now, and what's the roadmap for like the next few months?
We're not going to get any sleep for the next several months. We're in pre-alpha still. The game comes out in early 2013, and we're really excited just to keep pushing ourselves forward and sort of prove to the gamer that you actually can make a great movie game, and you can make a AAA game for Star Trek fans that they deserve.
Listen, thank you very much indeed for talking to us today.
Thank you so much.